Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In today's video, I would like to explain about the study of education and its relevance to language teaching. So the study of education or educational science, educational theory is perhaps the closest to language pedagogy. The concept of education are applied as a matter of course in language teaching such as much as any other subject of curriculum. So, as a professional field of study, education like medicine or law draws on number of other study such as philosophy, psychology, or sociology as such discipline. For language teaching theory, however, education itself can be regarded as multidisciplinary source discipline. So, in the next slide, here are sub-discipline of education. From Hans Hendrik 1919, there are 10 sub-discipline of education. The first one is philosophy of education, history of education, educational psychology, educational sociology, economics of education, educational administration and organization, educational planning, comparative education, curriculum, and educational technology. So in here, we will immediately discuss the possible relevance of the different subdiscipline for language teaching. So the first one is philosophy of education. So philosophy of education provide intellectual guidance on the great issue that education raises, but some other see is a role of critics and questioner of common belief and assumption. According to this point of view, educational philosophy should be concerned with the first one, analysis of educational issue. As an educator, we have to be aware of the newest issue in educational factor. And then clarification or intellectual therapy, tackling abstract educational question, seeking general perspective on education, developing and employing strategies of cognition suited to educational inquiry, dealing with high-order problems in education, solving intellectual puzzle that rises in educational inquiry, investigating the nature of conceptual folk relevant to education, studying educational language, analyzing and criticizing what is going on in other educational subdiscipline, facilitating the work of other educational subdiscipline. Yeah, in here there is probably no aspect of language pedagogy that cannot view from a philosophical perspective. There are two things, two important things in the philosophy of education. The first one is conceptual analysis. So in conceptual analysis, we will find a lot of things such as theory, practice, education, training, drill, instruction, curriculum, and so on. And it can be confusing and misleading. So we have to analyze each term. So this philosophy of education will help to clarify unstated assumption. Okay, the second one is question of value. In teaching language, we have to question ourselves or either our student. How important is to learn other language? What is the value of learning a language? What is important of learning language? And the next one is history of education. So the growing of education actually began in 19th and the early part of 20th century. But in the 16th, educational have emphasized on creativeness, training in critical thinking, and individual differences among learners, and vehemently rejected mechanical and authoritarian modes of teaching. Language pedagogy, following its own linguistic and psychological theories, stress the need for drill, habituation, conditioning, and automatic response. And then the language class of the 16th demand a much more rigid and authoritarian environment than was regarded as educationally valid in most of curriculum areas. And then the third one is educational psychology. So educational psychology is perhaps the most developed in education sector since it covers every aspect of education from psychological angle. So as educator, we have to understand our student psychological situation, such as where they come from, their family background that affect their psychology or their learning style, their personality. We have to understand all of this before we teach language. So this educational psychology, I think it is it has to explain with the previous material. So we have to continue to educational sociology. So when we talk about sociology, we talk about uh, human social relationship, right? So we cannot teach language for long without coming face to face with social context. So educational sociology places education as an activity and institution into social context. It recognizes school and other educational institutions as agency within society. So in here, school, university, of any other uh, institution seen as a part of society that reflect the existing social culture. So that's why educational sociology is needed to comprehend the educational factors. In the next slide, we will discuss about economics of education. So actually, this is a new branch in educational sector. Economic of education actually can be seen in the two point of view. The first one is to establish the economic benefit of education. So actually it is beneficial for developing country. It will help to decide the distribution of limited sources. And the second one is the necessary cost, accountancy of educational choices and decision. It can be done by measuring or assessing of costs and benefits of specific educational measure in comparison with other measure. For example, the cost of training and supply of language teacher, the cost of supervisor and non-professional aides, the cost of material, the time for class instruction, the space and installation needed, and so on. And the next one is educational administration and organization. So educational activities is depends on the structure of the system and within the system upon the structure of the particular institution. So So this educational administration include in financial management, school service, building, student enrollment, staff placement, curriculum, supervisor, teaching certification, student assessment, and other organization. Most educational systems have three-tier administrative structure. The first one is um, the central or national state or provincial. For example, Ministry of Education, Department of Education and Science. And for the regional or local, the example is Local Education Authority. And then School Board of Education, it is on North America. And for the institutional example is school or university. Okay, the next one is educational planning. So educational planning doesn't mean an inflexible or central control. Educational planning includes constant renewal and revision. Planning is also compatible with distribution of responsibility so that part of the plan is central, another part regional, and certain aspects such as curriculum can be done at the school level. The next one is comparative education. So actually it is important uh, for studying education and compare it from international point of view. So sometimes it's quite common for language teacher to work abroad because knowing how to approach, how to teach a foreign language is necessarily concerned with life and culture of another country. It is invariable also concerned with education in that country. And the purpose of comparing this educational system is we can see the different experience in various educational systems to establish what factors are of importance in the national development of second language proficiency. Next is curriculum. So the term curriculum itself is commonly used in two related sense. The first one, curriculum, is refers to the substance of program study of educational institution or system. The second one is more restrict sense. It refers to the course of study or content. So actually it can be concluded that curriculum is concerned with what can and should be taught to whom, when, and how. In curriculum itself, it is not only the subject matter or content matter, but also the entire instructional process, including materials, equipment, examination, and the training of teacher, in short, all pedagogical measures related to schooling or to the substance of a course of study. For example, in the USA, the school curriculum has been under review since the early 15th, and much of the modern emphasis on curriculum change and development throughout the world has been influenced by American curriculum inquiries in the 15th and